Welcome to the Travelex Weekly Outlook. The dollar started the week of August 30th and on mixed footing. The dollar did post gains against the euro, but it is off against the Japanese yen as investors really brace for a busy week for U.S. data. So consequently, investors are in really little mood to take on risk, and we're seeing the dollar higher against some of its riskier assets. During the overnight session, though, we did see the dollar rise sharply against the Japanese yen. That was during Asian trading after Japan had announced new easing measures to rein in some of the yen strength. If you recall, last week we did see the Japanese currency touch a 15-year high against the U.S. dollar. That's a level that really concerns Japan, which relies heavily on its locally made exports. But the Bank of Japan overnight basically decided to extend its recent bank loan program. They did so by an additional 10 trillion Japanese yen. And what that is designed to do is hopefully put downward pressure on Japanese interest rates and eventually lessen the appeal of Japanese goods. There was a short-term move higher in the dollar against the yen, but the yen eventually regained its footing as investors really were unimpressed by the move. And they soon returned to bidding the Japanese currency higher. The dollar last week had been broadly in the driver's seat, and that had been on concerns about the outlook for global growth. And under that scenario, of course, investors tend to flee riskier assets towards the safety of the U.S. currency. Last week, we saw that record weak U.S. housing data. That added to concerns about the outlook for global growth, and consequently, that was a key source of support for the U.S. currency. Investors have really kind of shied away from the concerns about the U.S. economy and have instead focused on a more broader perspective. In addition to U.S. economic weakness, there have been some signs of softening economies in China recently, as well as in the U.K., and consequently, that has heightened concerns about the outlook for global growth. Such a disheartening scenario that tends to boost investor demand for safety in havens like the dollar and the Japanese yen. But despite the dollar's solid performance throughout the bulk of the week last week, we did see the dollar give up some of its gains towards the latter part of the week. In fact, on Friday, there were some reassuring comments from Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke, and what that did was soothe investor concerns about the outlook for global growth, and consequently, investors tentatively returned to some of those riskier trading strategies, such as in stocks and currencies like the euro and the Aussie and Canadian currencies. As a result, that did weigh on some of those safe haven currencies, but the broader concerns about the economic outlook are likely to underpin demand for the dollar. On tap for the week of August 30th, investors will get key data on U.S. employment, household spending, consumer confidence, as well as on the manufacturing sector. Any type of data that misses the mark would tend to add to concerns about the recovery and perhaps spur demand for safety in the dollar. That is all we have for this week. For the latest on how some of those indicators come out, as well as the latest on the dollar, please be sure and check us out online.